Welcome to Counterintelligence. This is Eric LeVay. Today's guest is Seth Hettena, investigative reporter and author of Trump Russia, A Definitive History. Forensic News thanks our newest Patreons, Andre D., Angela J., Kelsey H., and as always, Craig P. and Jim R. Support Forensic News and Counterintelligence on Patreon. Without further ado, here's the show. Seth Hettena, welcome to Counterintelligence.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, Seth, it's great to talk to you. So you're an investigative reporter, and of course, you're the author of Trump Russia, Definitive History. I know you and I had a little bit of a laugh over this earlier, but of course, what I was saying was, in a conspiracy, or I don't know if that's the right word, but in a story that's ongoing, is it kind of funny to call your book a definitive history when this just keeps going?
It is. And I'm surprised that I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm surprised just how deep it keeps going. And the dirty secret of publishing is that authors don't get much of a say in their titles. So, but it is what it is. So
that's good to know. I mean, I'm not a journalist by trade, so that's actually interesting. So you write the book, but the title is more chosen by a publisher or someone else.
Well, let's say strongly suggested that you do it a certain way. Yeah. But I think they wanted a title that was as clear as you can make it, that this is exactly what this book is about. There's no, you're not going to get something else if you were buying a book that's called Trump Russia,
How many volumes theoretically do you think that you could write? I mean, in this story, it just keeps going, doesn't it?
It's endless. And I think, what I've seen is it just comes in waves, that there'll be a period of, a huge flurry of news and nothing, and then it comes again. And I think, and if Trump's who knows, but if he's a second term president, there's even more that may come. But yeah, I mean, you could easily write 3 or 4 volumes of this.
Seth, when you wrote your book, I mean, were you the first one to? There's been a lot of great books about this topic. Where was yours in the timeline?
Mine came out in May of 2018, and we rushed it to get it out as quickly as possible, so that we would be the first to kind of stake out the territory. And so we when I started, I got interested in this topic when people were still laughing about it and thought it was, there was nothing to it. Obviously, it's a lot more serious now, but it wasn't when I started. And we knew there was something there, and there would be more to it, and so we just we got it out as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So I want to, when I knew I was going to interview you, I always like to, as opposed to a lot of other shows, I like to start with the, how like rock bands, like they wait till the end to play their hit. I think it's important to just do that at the beginning. I think they should do that. And I also think in interviews. So I want to ask you, of all people, the big picture question, which is, in your professional opinion, what is Donald Trump's true relationship with Vladimir Putin?
I think that there's something to the compromise story. I don't know if it's a film in a Moscow hotel room. I think Vladimir Putin has something on Donald Trump. And I think that explains so much of his behavior and so much of what we've seen. It may be financial, it may be sexual, it may be many different things. But I think that, I believe the story that Putin has Trump over a barrel.
Yeah, well, I absolutely agree. Do you think you think it's more likely to be business or a more the salacious thing that would be this, what do you think?
It's tough. I mean, he's kind of, there are all these tantalizing things that he viewed Russia as this kind of sexual playground when he went there over the years. Sometimes when he wasn't married and sometimes when he was. So there's very strong possibility that it's sexual. However, this guy was, Trump is basically, for all intents and purposes, a money launderer. So it's not hard to gain compromising financial information on this guy. And so it could be a combination.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I want to, just as a segue, I kind of like how with interviews, you really never know kind of what you're going to get. And I like how you just called that, like you called him a money launderer. And, I approach this as, I'm an entertainer who works with, journalists. So I have a little bit of a different background, but I've noticed, you're a pro. You've worked for AP and, you've written for the New York Times, but you're not afraid to kind of just call it out. I guess what I'm trying to say is, Why is that? Why is that unusual in the world of journalism? People seem so afraid to just call the guy what he is.
That's a great question. Trump's not afraid to call what he sees, but journalists have been very hesitant. There's this debate still going on in the journalism community about whether to say he's a liar or not. And I just, I think I have a position that most journalists don't have, where I'm not working for a news organization that imposes its own kind of standards on me. So I'm more of a free agent, and I have more freedom, and I feel like I'm speaking for journalists who don't have that freedom. So I feel like it's incumbent on me to just say it, just say what everybody else wants to say but can't.
So Seth, you're saying that let's say hypothetically, I don't know, I'm just spitballing. Let's say a big national paper, they don't have the freedom to just kind of call a fact like that a fact?
Well, there are debates within the journalism community right now. Like if Donald Trump doesn't tell the truth, we all know that. Right. But if every time he does that, you say Donald Trump lied today, the danger, I think, from the editor's view is that you will look like you are just playing, you are out to get this guy,
right? And
you have an agenda. So I think that because his behavior is so extreme and so exaggerated, if you call it every time, it puts you in a bad position. If you say that Donald Trump lied today and said this, after you do that 10,000 times, which is what the numbers are, you would look like you have an agenda. So I think that's the danger of being at a newsroom where you have to kind of balance these things. And I know they're also concerned about where New York Times is concerned about where its reporters appear and what. So when I was at AP, they were they were very careful about what I could say and what I couldn't say. So I don't have those restrictions. So I'm a free.
That's very interesting to know. I know here at at Forensic News, I'm not going to speak for the reporters and the other staff, but I know that we're entirely Patreon funded. So I think that everybody has the belief that no one at Forensic News hides their the political beliefs, and I haven't, and it doesn't affect the reporting. It's just I think it's an okay way to carry yourself. I don't think it. I don't think the reporting suffers. I have a lot of admiration for the straight newsman or newswoman, that model. But I also think it's okay to occasionally, even Walter Cronkite called it like he saw it at least a few times.
Right. But if you represent an organization with thousands of people in it, and there's one person doing something, that can be called out, that reflects the entire organization,
Yeah.
So that's the flip side of it.
I guess it's like when you have any boss,
Exactly.
If someone else is cutting your check, you don't have the power that's what I.
Exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of what you were saying, there was a story recently about so we did find out that I guess the New York Times limits, I don't know, they mentioned not being able to go on Rachel Maddow. What were your thoughts about that?
I think Trump, Trump's behavior, Trump is just so unusual, and his behavior is literally putting pressure on journalists. This guy's gone to war with the press. This is a guy who declares the press the enemy of the people. You can't, you can't say a more outrageous thing. And so he is putting the press in a box where it's, he's failing in his foreign policy, his domestic policy is going nowhere. He's got no legislation, but he can make war with the press, and that's always going to win points with the base, and that's what he's done. And so it puts journalists in a really awkward position where they're trying to be the straight man to this comedian who is going off the rails here.
Yeah, and like you said, look, I get it. You're in a very tough spot, and I'm a person who's had a lot of jobs, so I get it when, especially in something like journalism, where it's so hard to get a job and so many jobs are hemorrhaging because of all these other things that are going on. I can see how that would really it puts fear in you. Hey, you got a family, you got mouths to feed, but then the other side of me, just. In my world as an entertainer, you get a heckler as a comedian, you take them down. That's just it.
Right.
And I look at it from a human perspective, and I'm like just speaking, let's say about the White House, the press corps, someone insults me to my face. It's not going to end well. And for them, I'm like, wow, how can you just stand there and take that?
Right.
but
Well, yeah, this is Trump's. This is the unique to Trump. This making war on the I mean, he's so destructive in so many ways, but that is one of the big ones, that he's undermining freedom of the free press, and it goes deeper. It's that this is a guy who is manufacturing his own truth.
Yeah.
And he's going to take out who's in his way, who tells a different story, whether that's the FBI or the CIA or the press or people in his own administration or whoever. They're getting out. They're getting out of the way. As long as this guy's in the White House. So that's the situation we're in right now.
Seth, can you take us through maybe the genesis when you decided you were going to write Trump Russia from beginning to publishing date?
Definitely. So. I started, first of all, I grew up in New York, so I knew Donald Trump from a very young age.
I'm so sorry. I mean, sorry.
But he was always this. It wasn't a big deal because he was this cartoonish character. He was this tabloid creature, this kind of big mouth, loud mouth guy who would kind of jump in. And he's not the only person in New York who does this. There are people who just jump into every controversy and, get in front of it in one way or the other. But that was Donald Trump. And so I knew him. In the book, I relate this, that I was in Trump Tower when it opened. And it was impressive. It is impressive what he built there. And when I was following the campaign, these things started popping up about Russia. And I couldn't square it in my head how the Donald Trump I knew from New York was somehow connected to Russia. And, so I followed that more and more closely. And just to understand that for myself, I started writing a website, just just TrumpRussia.com, Trump-Russia.com, and just started writing and trying to explain it and going back and looking at his business deals and all these mobsters who would show up in Trump Tower and, all his shoddy deals with Russians and Russians buying his mansions in Florida for overinflated prices and so on and so forth. And I really didn't. I was just honestly, I mean this. I was writing it for myself,
sure.
And didn't really care how many people were following it. But one day, a book agent contacted me and said, have you thought about turning this into a book? And so that's how it got started. And we pitched it, and eventually a publisher picked it up, and we were off and running.
Wow. So really what you're saying is that you started doing it. It was for you. It wasn't even, I mean, it was the best reason to do anything because you were curious about what was going on.
I wasn't selling ads. I wasn't hawking something. I was just trying to understand it. And the way I do that is just by writing. And that's kind of my nature. And so that's, it all kind of came together from there.
And I mean, big picture, what is your book about? I mean, what did you come away? What does the reader come away from it if you were to sum it up in one or two sentences, as hard as that is?
So there are a couple of things to understand. That the what happened in the 2016 election was not a one-off event. That Donald Trump has a relationship with Russia that goes back decades, and more importantly, he's been chasing Russian criminal money for decades. And that was kind of one of the pillars of his business when he started to fail in the 1990s. And he has continued that. That relationship has matured over time. He graduated, I guess you could say, from his dealings with the Italian-American mafia in the United States to the Russian. And I thought that was a message that needed to get out. This is a deeply compromised man. And that, there's a history to his relationship with Russia.
It's the only thing he ever graduated from, by the way. I'm still, always got to get in those one-liners. But no, I just wonder, do you know of any reporters who are tracking his transcript story? Did anyone ever get on that?
When he had Michael Cohen yell at Fordham Law or Fordham,
or just in general, I'm not even trying to pile on the guy. I just, what I see in front of me, I don't understand how this person was able to pass, to graduate. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Somebody probably, that's the thing with Trump. It's like it's like an amusement park for journalists. There's just so much there, and you can spend forever in one ride, and that'll be a career for most people. But he's got so much going on that it's almost impossible to keep up with it all.
An amusement park for journalists. That's good. That's really good. Right. So we learned from the New York Times that amazing story that exposed his kind of finances, that basically he inherited 500 million or something like that over a lifetime. And then when that was gone, is that when the Russian money started to come in your opinion?
Yeah. So yeah, there's this time frame, and the Washington Post did a really good take on this too, that sometime in the mid 2000s, he called himself the king of debt, right? That was his own kind of self-branding. And then all of a sudden he switched to cash. And that to me is not explained by his business. He says he had enough cash flow to maintain that. I don't believe that. I think that there was money coming in from external sources, and I think that's when Russia took a big stake in his business. Yeah.
Yeah. How, like, big picture, what I don't understand, what a lot of people don't, is the crime involving this, even just one person, him, is it's like off the charts. What do you have any insight into why there was no accountability? Why all these years?
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's a great question. And I get asked that all the time.
Really?
Yeah. And this goes back this was a guy who, they were grand juries. This is even before, this is the 1980s when he's, just getting started in business. There were multiple grand juries in New York sniffing around him, but he would refuse to come. He refused to testify. He had Roy Cohen, the infamous mob lawyer, as his personal attorney then. And he would stonewall and refuse to cooperate and refuse to talk. And he's very good at getting out of situations. Like he is walking, over the line, tiptoeing over the line repeatedly, and doesn't, never learns, just goes over to the next line and tiptoes that. Right. And just kind of mows down, anybody who gets in his way. He has lawyers like, Michael Cohen, not a very good lawyer, but he's better lawyers who are massaging the finances and the corporate structures and the documents to make sure that it's just on the gray area of legality, and that's how he operates. And he's always been in the gray areas, and he's a hard guy to pin down. And if if you're coming after him, he's coming after you. So, that combination has has let him get away with murder for a long time.
It's hard to reconcile, what I relate that to is what's going on now. I see the same thing, and again, I'm not trying to jump off on a tangent, but I see the Democrats and what they're doing, and not just them, and just I don't understand why no one is able to stand up to this man. It's not like, it just seems like it's a recurring thing. Like the law enforcement didn't stand up to him in the 80s, and now we're living this again. I mean, what is it about this one person that's able to get away with this?
It's almost worth a book in itself. When I talked when I went back and talked, what I did is I went back and talked to the FBI agents who kind of came across him in the 1980s. And, so there are circumstances that let him get away. So let me lay it out for you.
Sure.
One was when he started dealing with the Russian mafia. The focus was on the Russian mafia. So his name is popping up in deals with the Russian mob, kind of peripherally, but the FBI and prosecutors are so focused on getting these gangsters that he is kind of set aside. And there's a guy in my book who says something like, we should have been looking. We were looking in one direction. We should have been looking in the other. The second thing is that real estate. If you operate a bank, you have to deal with the Federal Reserve. If you run a company, you have to deal with state regulators. If you are a public company, you have the SEC. So there are all these people looking at all these different businesses, except for real estate. And for years, that was kind of this no man's land. That there was that it was kind of a free for all. You set up a shell company, and you can buy millions of dollars worth of real estate really easily in this country, and there was no way to stop it. And so Trump saw that as a business. other people see that as a danger sign. He sees it as an opportunity. And he's following he's following the money, he's following the dirty money.
It's funny because I think about like for example, like Semyon Milogovich, or however you say it, the boss of bosses. Like, I get why that guy's a criminal mastermind, because that guy's really smart. And that's
right.
Like, I'm almost like insulted that the United States of America is that, like, you can't like, if we had a guy like Mogilevich and he was president, I'd be like, well, I get that because this guy was smart and ruthless. But I don't know. I don't get the whole Trump thing. But maybe at this point, I'm just talking to myself. You've laid out very well how he is able to skirt through rules and
right. And there's part, we're missing pieces of the puzzle here, right? So to go back to your original question, like, how many volumes of this book will there be? I mean, we don't have all the pieces, why he decided to run, and the communications, the Mueller report said, it didn't say no collusion. It said they didn't find evidence of it. And, Trump is a guy who is, anybody who's going to talk about him, person is going to get crucified. So, I don't think it's too far-fetched to think that people, didn't tell the full truth, or stayed away, or didn't talk to Mueller, or stayed out of the country, or whatever. And we still don't know, what was going on. And we're all puzzled by it, but I think, in the end, it will come out, and my book will be 7 volumes long by then. Man, but we will know the story.
Well, Seth Hettena, I want to thank you so much for coming on Counterintelligence. And guys, if you want to check out the book, it's Trump Russia: A Definitive History, pending Seth's 10 other volumes that will be coming out. Seth, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me. I really enjoy what you do, and thanks for taking the time out.
I hope when you get that, let us, if you want to come back on when you have your next scoop, even just for a quick hit, that would be amazing.
That'd be great. I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, great. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening. Follow Forensic News on Twitter at Forensic Newsnet. Counterintelligence is at IntelPod. My personal account is Eric LeVay. Support Forensic News on Patreon. Sponsors can contact Counterpod at protonmail.com. Subscribe to Counterintelligence everywhere you listen to podcasts. Take care.